And in fact, the whole political induced theory that has fallaciously and erroneously brought about the erroneous system of evolution posited by Charles Darwin has actually done a lot of disservice to the economic service and to humanity. But that kind of erroneous concept that man came out of certain fossil records that metamorphosized into monkeys, then from monkeys to black people, then from black people to white people, looks so comical, and in fact doesn't just seem to click. But this is the kind of academic theories that have been consumed in schools and universities and colleges, and has actually caused a lot of harm to our very existence. But some of these things, God just looked down upon us and just laugh. When He is the creator and knows how things has actually gone wrong. But if that's actually the case, why is that monkeys do no longer continue to turn into black people, and then black people continue to turn into white people? It just doesn't sound right. It just logically doesn't link up. Sad. That's what. Hi guys, welcome everyone back to the channel. In today's video, we shall be looking at the origin of black skinned people and then white skinned people. But I hate to use the word race, because race in fact does not exist. Race is a political concept and a social construct. It's a way of dividing us. The reality that humans, we are actually from one man and from one woman. It was a way of making human beings sprout across the globe, and that is why God permitted what is today known as incest. God permitted a brother to marry his sister, and that is how come that Abraham was able to marry his sister, that is his half sister Sarai, and then Lot had children with his two daughters. But it was because it was a way of spreading humans across the globe, preserving offspring and then spreading it across the globe. So in order to bring about variation, in fact, God is not a God that is racist. God is not a God that divides us. In fact, He actually created us as one. But it's we humans that has divided ourselves. Now, in this video, we'll be looking at the reason why our brothers, the white skinned people, technologically are far ahead of us. But technologically, economically, in all spheres of life, they seems to be in the limelight and shining, in fact, and ruling the world. But there's a spiritual underlying factor to this status quo. In the biblical days, there was nothing like racism. Why? Because it was hard to group people, because you will find a black skinned person giving birth to white skinned person, and a white skinned person giving birth to a black skinned person. For instance, Laban being white, giving birth to Leah, black, then Rachel, white. Then the same thing, you come to the situation of Isaac giving birth to Esau, white, and then Jacob, black. Then you look at the accounts we have in Ghana, the accounts we have in Ghana today, but you can trace their root up to Esau, as their great grandfather. But Esau gave birth to Achan. So the present day accounts in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire can trace their roots to Esau, and then to Esau. And this was a white person. See? So it was hard to really bring about racism during those days. But because we have multiplied across the globe, then this has become a tool that has been used to actually divide us. Now, these are all the mysteries. These are some of the mysteries of God that are understood by God alone. But then today, in fact, there are still rare situations where you still find, biologically, you find couples that are black couples having a baby that is white, or white couples having a baby that is black. In fact, I heard of a situation in the US recently, the story of couples who had a baby. In fact, the woman gave birth to the baby and she came out black. And people could not understand. The husband could not understand how it came so, and suspected probably the woman was cheating. But that wasn't biological, that wasn't the case. It just happened that it has happened. So the man had to call for a divorce. But then later on, he regretted his actions, traced back, went back to reunite with the family. See? So God also permits some of these things to happen to remind us that initially, that is how we started. To look at an example is also Noah. When God destroyed the world, and then he preserved the offspring of Noah, and Noah had to now continue the human generation. Noah had 3 sons, Japheth, Shem, and Ham. And Ham was black, but Ham in Hebrew means black, bent, or hot. Now Ham also went ahead to have 4 sons, and these 4 sons of Ham were 2 were white, and the remaining 2 were blacks. So far, we had Mizraim, which means Egypt, who was white. Then Pat, which means Libya, who was also white. Then we had Canaan, or Canaan, which means black. Then we have Cush, which means Ethiopia, who was also black. Now, from one of the sons of Ham, that's Canaan, who was black, among his children, the firstborn, Sidon, was white. And in the biblical days, they were the Sidonians. And in fact, currently, they are the current day Europeans. Now, if you cast your mind back, if you get back to the Bible, in the book of Genesis chapter 10, verse 15, and 1 Kings 5, verse 6, you will notice that the Sidonians were people of craftiness, and they were skillful. And in the biblical days, they were those that built ships. And that's why when you're reading the Bible, you hear about ships, the apostles taking ships to cross to another end to preach the gospel. You hear about Jesus Christ taking a ship to cross to the other end to preach the gospel. Now, these ships were built by the Sidonians. Also, you also notice that when King Solomon was to build the temple, he asked the king of Hiram to build a temple for him. Why? Because the Sidonians, they were crafty and skillful. The book of Amos chapter 1 says their ship is full of craft. And that explains why the modern day Europeans, who are the Sidonians in the biblical days, in fact, they are enlightened. In fact, that enlightenment started earlier, not just today. And in fact, what's the meaning of Europe? Europe means enlightenment, or gatherers or acquirers of gold. So you can see that thing traced down to the current day Europeans from Sidon. And meanwhile, if you trace back their ancestor, trace back their root, you trace back to a black man, Canaan. See, so this is why this whole thing about racism, in fact, is just a human-made, it's an artificial creation. In fact, it's a human-made system that have been used to actually divide us. Now, to get to hook up the details, make sure you don't click away. For I'll be right back pretty soon with the very details of this video. See you. Guys, you are welcome back to the video. So what I'm going to reveal here is more of pneumatic theology. In fact, these are things you won't find in Google. These are things you might not find anywhere. Probably some few people who also understand some of these underlining coded information from the Bible. Now, I am not per this saying that I am someone who has a much deep coded knowledge about the Bible, and I'm the only person who have this knowledge. But these are things I've also equally learned, and we are all to learn and then understand what is happening, what is actually happening around us. Now, in biblical theology, we have what is known as pneumatic theology and systematic theology. In fact, systematic theology is what Apostle Paul learned from Gamaliel. In fact, that was the academic side of the Bible that he learned. And later on, he graduated from that into what is known as pneumatic theology. So now, what is pneumatic theology? Pneumatic is from the word pneuma, which means the Spirit of God, or the dunamis of God. And then this involves deeper revelations into coded informations that are in the Bible. In fact, there are a lot of things that are in the Bible that are coded, especially if you want to understand the book of Revelation, you need to have a deeper understanding of the book of Daniel. But there are certain things that, in fact, if God will put all in the Bible, in fact, the Bible is so big that it will be very hard to carry the Bible around. But the issue of the origin of humans is much deeper than what academic learning can reveal unto us. And that is why academic lens, philosophical theories cannot, in fact, will attempt, but cannot help us arrive at the origin of humans. And that explains why a lot of these academic theories has actually indoctrinated us and thrown us into the abyss. And in fact, has actually caused a lot of harm to humanity. And we are still suffering the repercussion till today. But it has brought about the coin word race and then racism that has actually divided the race. But in the actual sense, God didn't create us to be divided. He created us one. And that is why you find black people giving birth to white people, and then white people giving birth to black people in the biblical days. So now, how did it come that we exist on the planet? And as we know, from Adam down to Noah, then to Abraham, then to that root down, we all came into existence. Now, and as we know or might know, it's through one man's blessing that the humans on earth has actually sprouted out across the globe through a covenant that was established with this man, and that was Abram, later on to be called Abraham. Now, Abram was someone that lived in the land of Hor, and then in fact, situations, altar power that was in his father's house, and certain spiritual situations that surrounded his father's house. He had to move away from his father's house to a different land so that God could bless him. Now, Abraham walked uprightly with God and then passed the test of God, and that pleased God. And so God actually established a covenant with Abraham to make his offsprings as the stars and as the dust of the earth. And it's through him we have actually sprouted out into different languages. In fact, first with our skin, a different variation of skin pigmentation, then into languages, into ethnicity. And how did it all start? Abram in Hebrew means high father or father exalted. Now, Abraham, though he married at old age, but then the wife he got married to was barren, could not give birth. And that was his own sister, his half-sister, Sarai. And they almost lost hope of having children when God decided to visit Abraham and to bless him and promise him a son. And that son was Isaac. God, after giving this promise to Abraham, changed the name from Abram to Abraham, which means father of all nations. Then subsequently changed the name of Sarai, his wife Sarai, to Sarah, which will become fruitfulness. But this tells us that names actually have a negative effect. If you have a bad name, it can have a negative effect on your life. So the name Sarai was changed to Sarah, fruitfulness. And then from that, God opened the womb of Sarai at the age of 90. But God, in his mysterious ways, will always do things that will confound man. When Abraham clocked 100 and Sarah at the age of 90, they had their child, their first child. Between the two of them, their first child, though Abraham had a son called Ishmael, they had between them their first son, Isaac. And that was a miracle at that age. Who will believe this even today? Now, this son Isaac will be the covenant son, and through him that we will later on get to have the we'll get to know the origin of black people and then white people. So let's kick ahead. So now Isaac, who grew up into adulthood, also got married, and then he married to Rivka. That's in Hebrew. He married to Rebecca, in Hebrew known as Rivka. But unfortunately, Rivka was suffering the same predicaments that Isaac's mother, Sarah, suffered. The womb was closed. So you can imagine the pain that was in the home. But unfortunately for Isaac, God opened the womb of Rivka and she conceived. Now, one will imagine and think that Rivka will now be rejoicing, full of gladness with the pregnancy. But not. The pregnancy came with trouble. It came with pain. To the extent that Rivka will have to inquire of God why she was going through the trouble and the pain. And God, as he will always do, will not hide things from us. So God revealed to Rivka that she's carrying two nations in her womb. And that is twins. And these two nations, these twins, we later on get to know is Esau and Jacob. Now, during birth, the description of Esau was given. Why? Because he came out looking unusually different. So the Bible, according to Genesis 25, verse 25, describes him as being hairy and red from hair to his body, hair down, being red from hair to his body. And then, but then the description of Jacob was silent. Why? Because he looks just like everyone else. So there was no need giving the description of Jacob. It's the birth of Esau that will usher us into the birth of the white nation. But Esau became the progenitor of the Edomites, who were white people who dwell in the land of Seir. Now, in fact, the whole pregnancy to birth of these two nations, Esau and Jacob, was characterized with drama, rivalry, and trouble. When after Esau had come out as the firstborn twin, and Jacob followed up, Jacob came out, and he came out into the heel of his brother, Esau, and trying to pull him back into the womb, and that earned him the name Jacob, which in Hebrew means he who supplants at the heel. And in fact, this shows the trouble that was even already in the womb before their birth. And this implies that he actually wanted to be the first one who had come out. So how come the Esau had come out? So for the whole rivalry between these two signaled trouble that was around them, trouble that was to come, and trouble that we are still suffering the repercussion even today.
What are you, a racist?
That rift between white-skinned people and black-skinned people. And sadly, the concept of race has actually compounded and made the situation worse, and has actually divided it and created hate. And it didn't end there. Interestingly, the birth of Christ, when Christ was born, that hatred that was between Esau and Jacob even traced down to the birth of Christ. Now, at the birth of Christ, a lot of people might not know why King Herod ordered for the murder of babies in Bethlehem. At the birth of Christ, King Herod the Great, he also understanding things spiritual, because there was a god he was worshipping that was connected to fox, and being an Edomite. In fact, he was a son of an Edomite man known as Antipater the Edomian. So, being from that root of Esau and being an Edomite, saw that as a golden opportunity to revenge and murder him. But then that effort failed when the three wise men could not go back to report to him the location of Christ. He became frustrated with the whole issue, and then with his wrath, he ordered for the murder of all babies at Bethlehem instantly, because he was doing whatever he can do at all costs to revenge on Christ. He still failed. Now when he failed, and at his death, and then his son Herod the Antipas came to the throne, he still pursued the revenge, and eventually Herod the Antipas was the one that crucified Christ. So you see, so that revenge, that hatred has actually been there between Esau and Jacob, even till today. Interesting. And that is why in Luke chapter 13 verse 32, Christ referred to King Herod the Antipas as that fox. But when the Pharisees came to him to inform him that King Herod Antipas was looking for him to kill him, he said, "Go and tell that fox that I'll keep on casting out demons and healing people today and tomorrow." Because Christ understood that spiritual rift, that hatred that actually existed, and knew that eventually it is King Herod Antipas who killed him, because he knew it was his father Herod the Great who attempted to murder him, and then he couldn't murder him, but then could not succeed because Christ has to fulfill his purpose on earth before. So you see, so the whole thing is actually interconnected. And upon growing up, fortunately for Jacob, he had favor from God, and God decided to pick him and make a nation out of Jacob. And in fact, what God usually does is that God will always pick the underdog and exalt you, and then just to glorify his name. So Esau being white, he would have picked Esau, but then he picked Jacob, who was black. That is why when Samuel was sent to David's father's house to go and anoint a king for Israel, but when he went all the brothers of David that were huge and tall, and someone rejected all of them and was still looking for someone that was missing, because he was sent to go and anoint an ordinary person who was a shepherd. And that was what people did not understand. So eventually they had to bring David from the bush, who was taking care of the sheep as a shepherd. And interestingly, it was David who was chosen to be anointed as king. So God does his ways, and you cannot question him. In fact, he does all these things to glorify his name. So that is why Jacob was picked to actually birth the nation of Israel. So as Jacob was picked to birth the nation of Israel, the name Jacob was changed to Israel. In fact, Jacob is not a good name, so it was changed to Israel. And then it is through him that we will now see the birth of the nation of Israel. So Jacob got married to his uncle Laban. His uncle Laban's two daughters, Leah and Rachel. But Leah was the older sister, and Rachel was the younger one. So it's from these two women with Jacob that will have the 12 tribes of Israel. So, and interesting too, these two women, there was rivalry between them, as they were sisters. There was rivalry between them. So Leah gave birth to 6 of the tribe of Israel. Then Rachel also gave birth to 2. But then their housemates, because there was this competition to have more children. So Rachel gave her housemate Bilhah to Jacob to marry, so that she would have more children to herself. And from that marriage came Dan and Naphtali. But interestingly, my tribe, the Gabes, we can trace our root to Dan, the tribe of Dan. So Bilhah and Jacob was our grandfather and grandmother. We can trace our root on that genealogy to Dan, the tribe of Dan. And that is why in the language of Dagari, you will find words like Malaka, referring to angel, where we call angels Malaka. And in Hebrew, the same thing, Malaka. Then we call Jesus Yesu. And in Hebrew, it's the same thing. And another interesting thing too is the accounts of Ghana. The accounts of Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire can also trace their root, their genealogy to Esau. Surprising as it might sound, Esau being white, but then his genealogy is having black-skinned people as part of his genealogy. From that genealogy of Esau down, we have Asa. Asa gave birth to Akan. Interesting. And that is why Akan's also called Jesus Yesu, because they also have that Hebrew connection. Good. So let's come back. Leah gave birth to 6. And the 6 sons of Leah were Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, who were all blacks. So it is from the 6 tribe, the 6 children of Leah, that we have the Levi. The Levites came from Levi, the tribe of Levi. Then the kings came from Judah, the tribe of Judah. So David, Solomon, and all those kings came from that tribe of Judah, and who were all blacks. So that means that King David, Saul, Solomon, and all those kings in the Bible, they were blacks. They were black people. Interesting as it sounds, but we might not know this. Now, Rahel also had 2 sons, and then 2 sons from her housemate. 2 sons, that is Joseph and Benjamin. Leah also gave out her housemate Zilpah to Jacob to also marry and give birth. And from that marriage, they have the tribe of Gad and Asher. So all this together made the 12th tribe of Israel. So you see, from that root the genealogy down came Jesus Christ. And I think by now you should know Jesus wasn't a white European, as we are being indoctrinated into believing that he was a white European. Because from that root of Jacob down to the genealogy to David to Solomon, down that route came the Lord Jesus Christ. And as I explained earlier on, that was why King Herod the Great was after him to murder him. The sad thing is that a lot of people think that
Jesus wasn't white, Jesus was black.
But the whole thing has actually been politicized. We have been indoctrinated just to make us feel inferior, but make our brothers, the white people, feel like they are more closer to God. And that is why they twisted the whole thing and they make it look like Jesus Christ and in fact that root all the way white people. But these are all lies. These are all indoctrinations that we have been indoctrinated into believing into. In fact, that political indoctrination has actually played out and succeeded. And that is why at times it saddens me when I see someone out of sheer ignorance who think that following Jesus Christ or being a Christian, it means that you have Europeanized yourself. And they would rather think that we should go and be worshipping what is known as African voodoo, or worshipping stones, worshipping rivers, worshipping all kind of things that in fact look so annoying. In fact, when they speak like that, I go like, bro, do you really read the Bible? Do you even understand what is in the Bible? Do you know you're rich? These are all ignorance. See? But then this not by this saying that Jesus Christ came as a racist and for only black people. No. And that is why at the beginning, if you look at how we all came into existence, we are all mixed up. But the sad thing is for us to politicize the whole thing and make others look inferior. But Christ came for everyone. Christ came for black skinned people, for white skinned people. So in the eyes of God, there is nothing like race. In the eyes of God, we are just one people. Nothing divides us. Nothing separates us. So the question now will be, if we have this connection to Christ, the biblical genealogy, we're part of the Hebrews, then how come that we've lost all this glory? Here in 1720 BC, and he took away